Hi and welcome back. I'm glad you've joined me today, especially because this is a really serious topic. And this is the topic about medication. So let's talk about this. I just want to say there are many people who believe they can manage bipolar without medication, but just to set it down, I am not one of those people, and I do endorse the importance of taking medication with bipolar. So if we think about it, somehow like taking vitamin C, if you feel a cold coming on, it's quite easy because you know it will make you feel better. I think we could all agree on that. But taking bipolar medication is not so simple, and it's definitely something we need to understand, that if we are feeling better, if we stop taking our medication, we won't feel better anymore. So in order to remain better and in a state of health, we need to be taking medication constantly, which isn't an easy thing to be doing, and we'll discuss that a little bit. It's actually precisely because we are feeling better that we need our meds, and given that this is a chronic illness, it requires medication for life. So people can't understand, you know, you often hear like, why don't you just take your meds? You know, it's so obvious, but to us it's far more complicated than just swallowing a couple of pills. And this is because, for me, I often feel like I should overcome my illness without the need of medication to stabilize my moods. It makes me feel quite inadequate and, you know, insecure around my abilities to manage my life. You know, I can't cope without medication. So what is it about me that isn't strong enough to do that? And then, of course, there's this thing about I have to take medication for the rest of my life, you know, and that in itself is a very frightening and almost disabling kind of space to be in. So let's talk a little about little aspects about medication, and the first one is called noncompliance, noncompliance with medication. And so in my experience, I went on and off my meds incredibly throughout my whole history of 30 years of living with bipolar. I went off my meds without consulting my psychiatrist because I was actually fearful of his reaction. I went off my meds because I was almost in rebellion. I was in rebellion against my family, against society, against psychiatry, against psychology. I was in a fight. I was in a righteous fight to prove that I didn't need medication. You know, when I went off my meds, sometimes I went off slowly, like almost becoming that psychiatrist, like I'd reduce my mood stabilizer, or I'd slowly reduce my antipsychotic, like taking it every odd day, really like, you know, playing with the chemistry. And unfortunately, this led to extremely dangerous situations for me, actually life-threatening situations, and situations where my body just broke down, where I couldn't get to the toilet on time, where I went into lithium toxicity at one point, and this non-compliance with medication, you know, did most often result in me being hospitalized. So it got to a point for me where it was actually just too costly not to take my medication. When I evaluated how many times I'd been really sick, how many times I'd been manic and depressed, the impact of those experiences on my life, how many times I'd been in hospital, the associated costs with that. We'll look at the costs of bipolar in another video. That evaluation really made it clear to me that I needed to move into acceptance that I did have bipolar. And denial and acceptance are also huge and important topics, and we'll address those in other videos. So another aspect of medication is that bipolar is an illness like no other illness. And when I say that, it was with regards to my experience of feeling so insulted. You know, I was really insulted that people used to say to me, oh, well, bipolar is just like diabetes. You know, just take your pills and you'll be fine. And it seemed to me like people would never understand the mental turmoil, the pain, the real, like, incredibly deep and psychic experience and inadequacies and low self-esteem that this brought with it. But then, strangely enough, I realized that in fact bipolar is just like having diabetes. And I understood this because I realized it is a biological illness. And I didn't need to be a psychiatrist to understand that chemicals circulate in my body and that chemical compounds exist and pass from neurotransmitters, neural impulses through my pathways and around my body. And if there was clearly a chemical imbalance, then that needed to be rectified by treatment, and treatment is medication. So in many ways, just because it was bipolar didn't mean it was any different to any other biological illness, and for that it needed the medication. So that was important, to realize that illness is illness and needs to be treated. So another issue with medication is this experience of me being empowered with my psychiatrist. So I went through a process of trial and error with medication, and this is very common. You know, you can't get your meds right initially. They change. When you're in hospital, you need far stronger, more acute medication, and then you need your maintenance medication. But once this was achieved, once I was stable on my meds, I found and I find that I can really, really live in a functional manner, that I sleep appropriately, I wake at similar times, I eat carefully, I am able to control my weight, I have a positive libido, I'm easily, able to interact with my friends, my behaviors are pretty reliable, my mind is settled, and I can engage with whatever I choose. So, that acceptance of medication in my life has allowed me to live that functional life. Then in terms of this relationship with my psychiatrist, I used to have a very difficult relationship, seeing the psychiatrist as this professional up there, some kind of a god, and me like a lowly being, and so I sort of equalized my relationship with my psychiatrist, and I saw myself as me as the patient, him as the doctor, and that we could work together. And the way I did this was to start finding out about my illness. I started to monitor my moods, to identify pattern changes, identify patterns of living with the illness, but also to monitor any side effects that I was experiencing and any changes in behavior. And I used to take these records in to my psychiatrist and discuss them with him. I also got to the point, and I am actively engaging with my psychiatrist, obviously, where, if my psychiatrist didn't say to me I needed to check my organ functionings, then I'd remind him, and then, I'd get the blood form to go and check my thyroid, my liver, my kidneys. So it's really an interactive process. It's a relationship with my psychiatrist, and it's really been useful. In a way, actually, I see my psychiatrist as a service provider. And also, in the beginning, I did allow myself a second opinion. And I think that's your right. And I think it's your duty to take control of your illness, enter into a positive relationship, and make it work for you. So that's definitely something that's useful in terms of medication. So I'd love to hear from you in terms of your experiences with medication, your grappling with taking medication, where it's worked for you, where it hasn't worked for you. So please do email me. I will be responding to your email. You can reach me at info@bipolarcoaching.co.za. Also, please have a little time to spend looking at my website. That's worldwideweb.bipolarcoaching.co.za. And on that site, you can find out a little bit more about me. You can make contact, and you can also see what I'm engaged with, what kind of work I offer, the communication, the conversations I have around bipolar. So thank you so much for listening to this. Medication is such a key element of managing bipolar, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it started you thinking about your medication and your need to be compliant, and you need to take it within your control. And I'll see you later. So thanks a lot. Cheers.